In this second program, I'll show you how to make a shoulder bag, and for that you're going to need 2 balls of yarn, an 8 ply. I'm using pink, but you can use your favourite colour, and 1 ball of a contrasting colour, that's for the shoulder strap, 2 knitting needles, 4mm or the old size 8, a large sewing needle to sew up the side seams, and a toggle to fasten the flap. Now for the shoulder bag, we need to cast on 36 stitches. Do you remember how to cast on? Make a slip knot, put the yarn round your fingers, pull the loop through, pull it up, not too tight, put one of the needles through, pull it up, pick up the other needle and push the point of the needle through the loop, put the yarn round the needle, bring it slowly down, under, up with the loop on and onto your left hand needle, and we've made 2 stitches. Now for another stitch, push the needle behind the stitch you've just made, yarn round the needle, slowly down underneath, bring it up with the loop on and onto your left hand needle, pull it firm. Put the needle behind the stitch you've just made, yarn round the needle, down under, lift it up with the loop on and put the loop onto your left hand needle. Continue doing this till you've got 36 stitches on. I think that's 36. Count your stitches carefully to make sure you've got 36. Now we're going to knit 4 rows. Take your right hand needle and put the point through the front of the first stitch. Put the yarn round the needle, underneath, lift it up and off the left hand needle onto the right hand needle, and we've knitted a stitch. Put your right hand needle point through the front of the stitch, round the needle, underneath and off. Needle through the front of the stitch, round, underneath and off. We need to do 4 rows of knitting to start off the bag. Having knitted 4 rows, you're going to now change to stocking stitch, and that's 1 row knit, then 1 row purl. To start off with, we need to knit 1 more row. I've nearly finished mine. Turn your needle round with the work on it. We're ready to start purl stitches. With your right hand needle, bring it under your yarn and through the front of the stitch. Now with the knit stitches, we've been going into the back of the stitch. With a purl stitch, we're working into the front of the stitch. Bring the yarn round the needle, under the stitch, up and off. Put the needle through the front of the stitch, but bring it to the front, not to the back as we did in the knit stitch. Yarn round the needle, underneath and off. Needle through the stitch to the front, yarn round the needle, underneath and off. With the knit stitch, the needle went through to the back of the stitch. With the purl stitch, we're working all across the front of the stitches. Through the stitch, to the front, round and off. Now, for the bag, I want you to work till you've got 26 centimetres of stocking stitch done. "26 centimetres. Is yours 26 centimetres? Make sure that you measure from the cast on edge. You may have had to use a new ball of yarn. I have. Wind the 2 ends of the yarn round your fingers, pull them through the loop, pull them up and slide the knot up close to your work, and you've joined in the new ball of yarn. I've also got a coloured marker in this end of the row. We want to put another one in the other end of the row. So thread your wool in your wool needle, put the needle with the marker thread in it behind the last stitch on your needle, take your needle out, bring the yarn round and just tie it in a knot, and that puts the other marker in the row. Have a look at your work. Can you see the difference between the knit side and the purl side of your stocking stitch? The knit side is smooth and the stitches look like chains. Turn it over and the purl side looks different altogether, doesn't it? It's a much more uneven looking stitch. And of course you've got the garter stitch on the edge, so you've done stocking stitch and garter stitch. We're now going to do 7 more centimetres of garter stitch. That's just knit rows. Seven centimetres. Now we're ready to cast off. Do you remember how to cast off? Knit the first 2 stitches, pick up the first stitch and lift it over the second stitch and drop it off. Knit the next stitch, pick up the first stitch, lift it carefully over the second stitch and drop it off. Knit the next stitch, pick the first one up carefully and drop it over the second one. Now cast off all the rest of the stitches. Now to make up the bag we need some pins, and I usually use these ones with a glass top. It makes them easier to find in your knitting. If you notice, I've folded the bag so that the right side of the knitting is on the inside. Take your pins and just pin along to make sure that you have your seams straight. When you've pinned both sides, you need a length of yarn and your needle. Thread it up. We're going to use a dark thread instead of the pink so that you can see the way we form the back stitches to sew the seams. Now run the needle along the edge of the work. Do a couple of little stitches on the edge to hold the yarn firm. Bring the needle up 2 stitches along and 1 row in from the edge. Back 2 stitches, forward 2 stitches, back 2 stitches and forward 2 stitches, back 2 stitches and forward 2 stitches. You can see why it's called back stitch. Now I'm going to undo this and go back to sewing up with the pink. Finish that side seam, do the other one. Take out the marker threads that we put in on the sides. And fold the bag into the right side. Bring the points out. There we are. Fold the flap over and we're ready to put the toggle on. Mark the centre of the flap so that we get the toggle in the centre. Fold it over. Just put a pin on the fold, that's the centre. Thread your needle with double strand of yarn. Double it over. Run the needle along 2 or 3 stitches on the inside of the flap. Pull it along. A couple of stitches over the edge to hold it firm. Form a loop and bring the needle round to the other side of the pin and take the pin out. Now be careful. Hold the loop with your finger. 2 more stitches to hold it firm. And then run the needle along 2 or 3 more stitches on the inside of the flap on the other side. Cut it off and you've got your loop. Fold that down and with another pin mark where the toggle's got to go. Lift up the flap, bring your needle in to the outside, take the pin out, do a couple of stitches to hold the wool, pick up your toggle and make sure it's firmly sewn on. Take your needle through to the back, a couple more stitches to fasten it off. Trim the ends off and you've got your toggle on and we can fasten it. Next, the shoulder strap to finish off the bag. I've cut 6 lengths of the contrast colour and 3 lengths of the pink, the main colour, 114 centimetres long. Tie a knot in the end, a little bit down from the end, which gives you a tassel. Now, ask a friend to hold it for you. I'm going to have to use sticky tape. And we'll plait. All right. If you don't know how to plait, watch this close up and I'm sure you'll be able to learn. It's very easy. You're just twisting the strands over and under each other and plaiting. Finish the plaiting and then tie it off with a knot. Trim the ends and we're ready to sew it on. Thread some wool in your needle. Hold the strap along the side seam of the bag. Bring the needle up from the back, through the strap, back again, and up and back again. Now turn it to the inside and do a few stitches catching through the strap so that it's quite firm, and cut it off. Trim the other ends and it's attached. Through to the wrong side, several stitches to hold it. One more stitch. That finishes the bag. And that's the end of the second program.